Surprisingly, the constituents of the cannabis plant were not well known when we started work many years ago. After 1964, there was a lot of work on THC and some of the other constituents, which we also isolated and elucidated their structures. And for the next 20 years, there was a lot of work on these compounds, and much of the things that we know about these compounds, the activity of these compounds, was done at that time. One thing was not known for 20 years, almost 20 years, and that was the mechanism of THC action. Alan Howlett, young professor at that time of pharmacology at St. Louis, found that there is a receptor, later called CB1, and then a person in England identified a second receptor known as CB2, mostly in the periphery, but pops up in the brain. So now we are sure of two receptors that are present, and THC acts on them and stimulates them and causes the activity when needed. So we went ahead looking for the compounds in the brain and the periphery that would activate these receptors, and in 1992 and 1995 we reported the most important ones. One of them we called anandamide. Ananda comes from the Sanskrit name of supreme joy, which has turned out to have a different chemical structure from the compound in the plant. Rather strange, I would say, because the two compounds do exactly the same. These compounds are extremely important. They act in a huge number of physiological conditions. They interact with other neurotransmitters. They interact with in other systems as well. So they are important players in our body. So there has been a huge amount of work on these two compounds, anandamide, another one we isolated, the 2-AG. And so today we know quite a lot about the mechanism and how what they do, and therefore we can also learn a lot about the ability of plant cannabinoids like THC or synthetic cannabinoids that can act on this system.
While we've had somewhat of a moratorium on doing research with smoked marijuana as a medicine, there's this explosion in cannabinoid receptor agonists, antagonists, endocannabinoids, manipulating the endocannabinoid system. But I think it's very exciting, to think about all the potential therapeutics that can come. As I mentioned, I've sort of become a student of plants as medicine, and I'm in favor of cannabis as a medicine. I'm a cancer doctor, and not a day goes by that I don't have to talk to a patient about medicine to increase their appetite, decrease their nausea, decrease their pain, help their sleep, and decrease their depression. Now, instead of writing prescriptions for 5 different medicines that all have potential side effects, I can tell a patient, you can take one medicine, and in fact, you can grow it yourself. So, I think the whole plant is pretty good medicine. It's hard to beat nature.
There's also other herbal products that aren't available by prescription that you can go into a health food store and find. Those are like echinacea or St. John's wort. Those aren't approved FDA products. They do meet FDA standards for labeling and that sort of information, but these aren't FDA approved products for a medical condition. These are more like dietary supplements. One course of action for medical marijuana is to, of course, remove it from the scheduling system altogether and create a new herbal dietary product known as marijuana.
We know way more now than we did 10 years ago. There are clinical trials in MS, in fibromyalgia, in rheumatoid arthritis, in cancer pain, in neuropathic pain, which didn't exist 10 years ago.
An important aspect of quality of life is to be able to have a locus of control over your own destiny. One patient, multiple sclerosis patient, told me that I would rather be in one of their prisons than a prison of my own body. When he found out that cannabis allowed him to walk and actually have some locomotion, he was able to move out of a wheelchair. And so he actually moved himself from Illinois to Washington because we have some degree of acceptability of medical cannabis there.
What we tend to forget as physicians, I think, is that we have evolved with the plants and that manufactured pharmaceuticals contain structures that aren't found in nature and are more difficult for the body to metabolize than structures that are found in nature. At any rate, I think more and more physicians are hearing from their patients that cannabis is useful for a wide variety of conditions. And I think that's why I'm getting these referrals, is because the physician says to themselves, I've heard this before, and I've seen this patient for a long time, and they have credibility with me. Within the last year or two, we've had the American College of Physicians, the second largest physician organization in the country, support medical marijuana. We've had the American Medical Association, the largest physician organization in the United States, call for rescheduling of cannabis so it can be prescribed and more research can be done. We've had 14 State Nurses Association call for medical marijuana to be legalized, as well as the American Nurses Association, the American Public Health Association, and maybe another 100 or so health-related organizations.
In 1999, the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine published the most comprehensive report to date on the medical efficacy of cannabis. In 2000, the University of California established the Medical Cannabis Research Center to follow up on the mandate of the 1999 report. The Medical Cannabis Research Center's findings are significant because they shore up the scientific credibility of medical cannabis and answer critics who say there's insufficient proof that cannabis is medicine.